guys hear okay? I'm seeing some hearts. That means yes. Hi, Skylar, Ryan, Taylor. Good to see everybody. You're listening to Sparta right now with Jim Ward on vocals. This is off their latest release, Trust the River, and this song is called Miracle. And we're going to be talking to Jim Ward in just a little bit. He's going to come on in the next 3 or 4 minutes, and we'll get a take from him on what it's like to release a new album in the midst of a pandemic, what it's like to own a restaurant with your wife and not be able to have customers actually sit in the restaurant and still try to keep that going and keep your employees employed. And hear a little bit about what he's doing in his spare time, which I think also includes volunteering at the food bank. So Jim Ward coming up, and looking forward to talking to him and looking forward to having him answer your questions. So if you've got a question for Jim Ward of Sparta, there's a little question box right there, at least on my screen. You can hit that, ask your question, and I can bring those up when we have Jim on in just a little bit. Hope everyone is doing okay. Hope you're healthy. Hope you're well. Hope that you are staying the fuck at home, as they say, and not going out under any circumstances if you can. El Paso just elevated or furthered the restrictions that we have in place here. If you travel into El Paso from a distance greater than 100 miles, which is just about any other city in the world, is more than 100 miles from here, with the exception of Las Cruces and Ciudad Juarez and a few others, then you are supposed to self-quarantine. And that means quarantine, do not leave the house. Stuff gets brought to you. You don't go out at all for 2 weeks. Not only do we have a shelter-in-place order, which I'm grateful to Mayor Margot for implementing, but we also now are unable to go and use the trails in the city. We have, for those of you not familiar with El Paso, one of the most beautiful cities on planet Earth, that has this massive mountain range that we call the Franklin Mountains, part of the larger Rocky Mountain chain. And it comprises part of the largest urban state park in the United States. We can no longer go on those trails anymore. I think too many people, in order to keep from going stir crazy, we're leaving the house, going out on the trails, and beginning to congregate. And we don't want COVID-19 to spread. And so that is off limits now. Self-quarantining, and that's different than sheltering in place. Quarantine is just don't leave your home under any circumstances. And I guess people have to bring food and supplies to you. You have to self-quarantine if you have come to this city from a distance of greater than 100 miles. And if you look at a map and you're not from El Paso, you will see that we are more than 100 miles from almost any city except Las Cruces or Sunland Park or Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. So that, though, I think is a difficult but important decision to make to stop the spread of this pandemic. Reminder, stay the fuck home. Do not leave your house under any circumstances unless you must. And then if you do not come within 6 feet of another breathing human being, or non-breathing human being for that matter. Just don't come close to other people. If you are in an essential job, you're a healthcare worker, you are at a grocery store stocking the shelves or ringing up our purchases, you work at one of these restaurants that have stayed open in order for us to be able to feed ourselves, God bless you, stay safe. And for everybody else, if you care about those who are on the front lines, do your part and stay at home and don't leave, so that we stop the spread of this pandemic and keep everybody safe and ensure that those hospitals are able to reserve their capacity for those who truly need help, who truly have emergencies going forward. Speaking of which, we learned yesterday that our governor implemented something akin to a shelter-in-place order, although he refuses to call it that, which is really confusing for a lot of people, but it is better than what had existed before, but with some curious exceptions. For example, you're unable to obtain reproductive health care during the pandemic, but you can go to a gun store. You're unable to congregate in large groups, but you can go to church. Churches were given an exemption, like literally in-person in-service, not internet churches, not live streaming churches, but hey, get a bunch of people in the same space where we can easily transmit this virus. That apparently is okay according to the governor in Texas. Don't know why you should not go to church under any circumstances, or to the temple or the mosque or any gathering place whatsoever, while this pandemic is still taking its course. We have yet to reach the peak number of infections or deaths anywhere in this country, certainly in Texas. So stay at home. Let's just reiterate that one last time. I was talking to somebody today whose daughter is a nurse, and she's one of these people on the front lines in an ER. My sister Charlotte is an ER nurse. And this woman was telling me that her daughter is writing a letter right now to her husband. Everything that she wants to be able to say to him in case she contracts coronavirus and becomes too ill to be able to tell him these things. She's writing that out right now. If you saw Christina, Amy's sister, my sister-in-law, who is a physician in New York City, her husband is an emergency room doctor, and he was overcome by the realization that he had yet to make a will out. He's a young guy, probably doesn't think he has to write a will, for decades down the road, but realizes he's on the front lines. And we are seeing, unfortunately, healthcare workers, because we don't have enough personal protective equipment, succumb to coronavirus and COVID-19. We just read a story in the Houston Chronicle today about a nurse who is on life support in Houston because he did not have the personal protective equipment. We read about another nurse in New York City who died because he didn't have the personal protective equipment. Those are the gloves, the masks, the visors, the gowns, the stuff that keeps you from being infected or passing that infection along unwittingly to your patients. And so, 3 questions that we all need to be asking of those in positions of power and public trust right now, starting with the president. Where are the PPE, the personal protective equipment? Where are the ventilators that keep people alive once they have COVID-19 and they're struggling to be able to breathe? And number 3, where the hell are the tests? How are we going to protect the public if we don't know who has COVID-19? If we can't do contact tracing, that is, find everyone that infected person has come into touch with or to contact with over the last 14 days so we can get them to isolate so that we control the spread of that. There's got to be accountability for the PPE, for the ventilators, and for the tests. And until we have that, and until we have them in a sufficient number, we're going to see people die or become sick unnecessarily in this country. So let's keep the pressure up. Let's keep asking those questions. Let's make sure that we get some answers. All right. Now, our guest, Jim Ward, lifelong El Pasoan, graduate of El Paso High School, really good friend, amazing human being and humanitarian, in addition to being a founding member of At the Drive-In, Sleeper Car, Sparta, probably some other bands that I don't even know about. Beyond being the proprietor of several clubs and restaurants and bars, including the world-class Eloise on the west side of El Paso that is still open and serving meals for pickup right now. Beyond being a philanthropist who holds a great concert every year to raise money for the El Paso Community Foundation, Jim Ward is very often found, when he's not doing all those other things, at the food bank here in El Paso. And that's where I actually saw him last in person. And then I learned that he was there again today. So I could not be more excited to have Jim Ward join us right now. And I'm going to push this button that hopefully is going to bring Jim Ward into this conversation. Let's see if we can do it. Yes.
Hey.
Jim, how are you?
I'm good. This is weird.
You're clean shaven.
I am a little bit.
Yeah, you look good.
This is really weird.
It is a little strange. Yeah, this is the future. You know, I was on a Zoom call with some friends this weekend with Mike Stevens,
Of course.
who by the way is going to be on tomorrow, and Dave Gwynn, artist from Philadelphia, both really good friends of mine. And we were Zoom calling each other, which we've never done before, right? Like if we talk at all, we'll pick up the phone, reach out to one another. But this technology has existed now for, I don't know, 15 years. And I always thought as a kid, this would be the future. If I wanted to call Jim Ward, I'd pick up my video phone and call him. And now, due to this pandemic, we're actually talking to each other in the future as I envisioned it to be. So thanks for joining us. You were at the food bank today. Tell us what that was like.
We were. Christina and I went down this morning. We did the morning shift. So started by breaking down some boxes, and then we packaged some lettuce. Then we put boxes into cars, and it's both inspiring and heartbreaking, right?
Yeah.
Just nonstop cars. It just didn't stop. We were there for 4 hours, a little over 4 hours. Yeah, it's hard, actually. It's kind of hard to take. And
how long was the line?
Endless.
Yeah.
Endless. I don't know. I literally don't know when it ended. We packed up and left at about 12:30, and there was still all the way to the loop. So yeah. So it's good. It's good to see, and it's good to be outdoors and seeing people, but it puts it in perspective for sure.
You know, I was surprised at how good I felt when we were volunteering there last week, because you're doing something productive, you're doing something that helps somebody. You're not stewing at home, angry or anxious or afraid. You've got some purpose and function in your life. And what I also found is that you have the ability to socialize with people in person, at a distance of 6 feet or greater. And it's where I last saw you in person. This was a couple of weeks back. We were both packing boxes of food that would then be distributed. And the fact that I could catch up with you, find out what you were listening to,
it was fun.
Share a joke, try to wing a piece of cardboard at you and see if I could get you. All of that felt really good. And I can't encourage people enough to call their local food bank and follow your great example and see if they can help out right now. Because as you said, the need is literally endless. The line of cars does not stop.
Yeah, it won't stop. And I think it's pretty easy if you're healthy and you're not showing symptoms and you haven't been around anybody that's sick. It's good for the community, and honestly, it's going to be good for you.
So you have a record coming out, and let me make sure I get this right, and you correct anything that's wrong. I believe it was supposed to come out on the 10th of April. So it's like a week away.
Out April 10th. Yeah.
Okay.
So
and what does that mean?
Yeah, I was going to say, these days when a record comes out, it just means that it's put on all the platforms. So, Apple, Spotify, Tidal, all those things will have the full record. We've been releasing sort of singles, what you would call a single, every 6 weeks or so since January. And we, had been pushing this boulder up a hill for a year now, and sort of got obviously sideswiped by all this stuff. So all of our social, physical engagements are postponed. We would have started tour at the end of April. Now it's postponed for a while. But the vinyl got shipped out early, which is a nice surprise to some people because, and this is the weird part, they weren't sure, because the vinyl's coming from Canada, they weren't sure if the border would be open for trade.
Wow.
When the record came out. So they said, we're just going to send them all out now. And I said, of course, that's fine. I mean, it's just it's a surreal conversation. And the conversations that I have, daily or weekly with my team, every week is a new, just what? Like, what is happening? And this is a small, we're lucky. The rock and roll part of my life has been a great blessing, and I'm so grateful for everything I've ever had. But at the end of the day, it's not that important. I mean, it's important to make music and to share music, but we're not saving lives, and we need to put all of our resources and all our energy into those fields right now. So we're fine. We're just gonna sit back, put the record out. You can order the vinyl; it'll come someday. You can listen to it on streaming sites. I have a Patreon account where you can watch I think we're going to stream the making of documentary on the 9th or the 10th. I guess we're going to do it on April 10th. And you can enjoy it. I hope it brings joy to people. I'm proud of it. We worked hard.
I've listened to 3 songs from it so far and really like it a lot, and cannot wait for the record to come in the mail, and be able to listen to the full thing on a proper sound system and not through the speaker on my phone. And reading the comments on YouTube where you posted some of the videos, people are really excited and they love that you guys are back. People really like the record. And what I guess kind of kills me about this for you and for any touring musician is you can't then go literally physically connect with those fans that you have all over the world who want to hear you play these songs and songs that you've recorded in the past in person. I was watching a recording of a Zoom video call with the 15 members of this high school mariachi band in Roma, Texas. And it was so beautiful and so powerful. And I love how they transcended this barrier and are able still to be together in some way. Are you and members of the band at all able to practice together via video, want to practice together, want to do anything public through video?
So we're not doing anything as a band. It would be hard for us to practice, honestly. And there's really no need right now because we're all sort of stuck in our separate places. I'm the only one in El Paso, so all of us would be in different cities right now. I've done a couple of things on Instagram, just playing acoustic, and I'll continue to do that. Mostly just because I do it, and then I get these people just sending me, thanks for breaking up the monotony, or thanks for playing the song, or thanks for just doing something. And it seems like such a small thing I can do, and obviously it's good for me to do it. I learned, I did Green Eyes from Coldplay the other day, and just to take an hour to learn a song proficiently enough to not massacre it, and then to record it, and then to put it out for 2 hours, I didn't think about any of this stuff, and I just was making music and playing and learning new skills on the laptop and the iPhone, which I'm not great at. So this has been kind of a good time to learn that stuff as well.
Well, I've got an idea for you. So I may have told you that we're doing some homeschooling for our kids right now. And our youngest, Henry, who's 9, and every other day I've got a music class with him where I'm supposed to teach him music. And Amy has left it open-ended, whatever that means, and I've thought about playing records, and I played him some records. We have gotten the 3 kids in the basement, and we'll kind of over the course of an hour create a song, and each kid has a different part on a different instrument. Today I just had Henry solo, and I tried to teach him the bass line from Stumped by Minor Threat. And yesterday was Iron Man by Black Sabbath. So what would be really cool is if I could stream you in to actually teach him something beyond that. That might be as far as my guitar teaching capabilities extend. We had Robert Gunn on the other day to do a history lesson on the Pueblo uprising of 1680. So you might pick some great rock and roll track that every kid should know, and we could have you stream in and do that. Yeah, I'd love to. You down? Okay. Fun. Yeah. So tell us.
I was going to say my friend Carlos is in a band called Chicano Batman, and they are about to put out a record as well, and they're locked down in Los Angeles. And so he just did Instagram Live the other day and taught whoever tuned in one of their songs. So he just sat down and showed everybody how to play the song. And I thought it was such a cool way to because that's something you wouldn't do at a show. You wouldn't be able to just sit down with the audience and say, okay, everybody, we're going to learn the song, because that would be ridiculous. But this has given us like a new opportunity to connect on different ways.
So that was pretty nice. Trust the River, new album comes out the 10th of April. You can find it on any platform that you want to. What's the label if you want to order a real piece of vinyl that you can touch and put on your turntable? It's
Dine Alone out of Canada.
Dine Alone.
Yeah, just Google Dine Alone. Easy to find.
Cool. All right, now I want to switch gears. You and Christine are also the owners and runners of an amazing restaurant on the west side called Eloise. You're one of the few restaurants that, and I don't know if it's few, but I haven't found a lot that have stayed open in the midst of a shelter-in-place order here in El Paso that, as I mentioned earlier, has only become more restrictive. Amy and I picked up dinner for the family this last weekend. It was excellent. We basically picked up the phone, called in the order. They said it's ready in 20 minutes. It was. They brought it out to our car so that we didn't have to go in, and everybody kind of kept their distance. And it was a smooth operation. What has that been like for you and for your employees? And tell us what it's like to keep this restaurant running in the midst of not being able to have people literally sit in your restaurant or order from the bar.
So I think for us, it happened pretty quickly. It went from sort of business as normal to we know something is coming to move all the tables 6 feet apart. You can't have more than 6 people. Maybe 48 hours later, it was like you can't have anybody in the restaurant anymore. We had to furlough about half the staff. We tried to sit down and talk to as many of them as we could and figure out the best way to keep everybody somewhat employed if possible. So if you order delivery from Eloise, you may see your favorite bartender who's just trying to make rent. If you go to pick it up, you may see one of the other employees just kind of helping out in whatever way we can. Obviously we do 6 feet apart at the restaurant. We do all the cleaning measures that we can do. My main goal has been to keep open, first off, and make sure that we can pay as many of the people as we can and keep them. There's no other jobs to get. And that's the scariest, hardest part is if you're not working at your job, you're not going to work anywhere else. There are no jobs. This is unprecedented. So our main goal has been, we don't use third-party delivery apps. We use our staff. Sometimes they're just on call, and if a big order comes in, somebody will drive in and pick it up and deliver it. And, you know, we have as strict guidelines as we can as far as everybody takes their temperature before coming to work. Everybody, if you're not feeling well, then you're not allowed to work, obviously, and you take as many days as your doctor needs you to take to find out. I mean, we're trying to be responsible and do the best we can. How is it going to play out? I don't know. And the real feeling is, as optimistic as I am for everybody, this is devastating. It will change probably all of our lives in some ways. And I'm sure there's going to be some positives, but there's going to be a lot of negatives. And I just want to do the best that we can do for our community and our crew.
You anticipated some of the questions that I've seen float up in the comments about what you're doing for your staff and how you make sure that they're safe. And you talked about the distance that they keep from one another, the cleanliness with which you enforce, in your restaurant, but then also this drive you have to make sure that people stay employed and are able to make a living, and realizing there aren't a lot of other jobs around right now. One thing that I think I learned from you, from your Instagram feed or from Eloise, is in Texas you can now deliver drinks.
Yeah. So
like I could order a cocktail or a beer or a glass of wine and you could bring it to my door?
Yeah, as long as you order food. So I'm not sure why they made that the rule, but that is now the rule. So yeah, if you order a grilled cheese sandwich and a 6-pack, we will bring it to your door. As weird as that is. But yeah.
Asking for a friend, how many grilled cheeses do you have to order to get more than a 6-pack? Is it one 6-pack per grilled cheese? What's the ratio here?
They just say you have to order food. So we've had people that have gotten a side of fries and like several cocktails. And part of it is like, what's the enforcement of like,
right.
I think it's like our least thing to worry about right now.
Right. They're bigger fish
as long as, and this is the only thing that we make sure that the staff knows this. If you are delivering, make sure that there's a valid ID, so we're not just supplying teenage kids with booze.
Right.
Yeah. As long as there's an ID, they're good.
I have one more question for you, and then there are like 35 questions queued up. I won't make you answer them all, but see how many that you want to take. One of the last shows that you played, I don't know if it was the last show, one of the last shows, you opened up for Bernie Sanders when he I was about to say when he played, but when he spoke at the Abram Chavez Theater in downtown El Paso. Tell me what that was like.
So it was I think early voting started on like a Tuesday, right? Whatever it was, February something. Christine and I talked about it. We made our decision that Bernie was going to be our vote. And the next afternoon, I got a call from his campaign asking if we would play, or if I would play in some way at the rally at the Chavez. And I said, yes, but I want to do it with my full band, if you guys would allow that or facilitate that. And they said, yeah, sure. So people flew in, we practiced, we went to play the show, watched him speak. I find him inspiring. I liked it. I thought it was, his energy is great. The people around him were really great. His staff was really great. I kept telling him, like, we're really loud. Like, are you sure? Like, even while we were sound checking, I was like, do you want us to not do this? And they're like, no, we love loud. Turn it up. It's all good. No problem. So it was fun, and it was a good experience. And I wouldn't say that I would only play a Bernie rally, but it was important to me that we had sort of made that decision, and then they called, and I felt good about it. I feel like as an artist, if you endorse, if you play with people, then you're kind of endorsing them. I think it is giving sort of and for whatever people take that, they can take it for what it is. At the end of the day, I write songs and put out records and own a restaurant. You don't have to listen to what I think about politics. If you choose to, great. I happen to really enjoy politics. You and I talk a lot about politics. But when you're running for Senate and I went out and played with you and we drove around, that's me wholeheartedly signing up to something. And I wanted to make sure that it was something that we believed in, and I enjoyed it. And vote. It was fun.
Yeah, I was really glad that he came to El Paso. It is so rare that a presidential candidate will come to El Paso. It's not the easiest town to get to. And you grew up here, I grew up here. You, like me, may have had a chip on your shoulder for much of your life about El Paso not getting the attention or the respect or the resources that it deserved. And so for a leading presidential candidate, to take the time to come here means a lot to me. Also means a lot to me that you're here. I think you and Christine could live, you could record, you could run everything that you're doing out of any city in the world, and you chose El Paso. And for me, that's a point of pride. That's something that I share with people from other part of the country. Hey guys, Jim Ward lives here, and he chose to live here, and he's proud of living here. So I thought that was a great deal, the two of you coming together in El Paso. All right, I'm going to pull up some. I agree with this comment, Jim. A stand-up human being as always. Okay, Jim, I'm gonna give you a tough one just as a start. Landon wants to know what your favorite color is, and then I'm gonna look for a serious question.
Probably, maybe, ballpark.
Or green.
I don't know.
Here's one from Jack. Now we're gonna go a little deeper. What issues draw you into politics? Why do you care?
So I think my number one issue that I about daily would be probably equality, and I think that that's such a broad thing, whether it's LGBTQ or whether it's women's rights or whether it's indigenous rights or whether it's animal rights. I think to me the broadest thing that brings me in would be equality.
Great. I'm going to pull up another one here. So you have a lot of tattoos, and this question could be about any of them. It's what's the tattoo on your hand of? But I think there's one tattoo that connects to what you and I were talking about when it comes to El Paso.
So there's this one, which is, if found, please return to El Paso, Texas. The ones on my hands, there's one that's priorities, and then there's an anchor, and there's a dagger, and there's some lanterns. There's a cat. There's a
That
pirate
covers
thing.
it.
I have a lot. I don't have great tattoos, but a lot of tattoos.
Hey, Jim, you mentioned equality, and I saw trans rights. What's your favorite record right now?
Favorite for sure. It's J. Robbins' Unbecoming. So J. Robbins was the singer.
Guys, I lost audio from Jim. Can you hear audio from me? Kano, tell me if you can hear me. If not, we'll restart the stream. I know you can't hear him. Can you hear me? So no, I don't think any. Material guy says yes. You can hear me. Jack says yes. Jim, give us a sound check. Jim. All right, Jim, I'm gonna bring you back in. Bring Jack. Let me see if we can bring Jim back in to answer Jack's question. That was the next question that was queued up. Cynthia, will you let Jim know that we're gonna try him again really quick? Yeah, Jim is telling me that he can't hear me. We could not hear him. This is a low budget operation, if that wasn't obvious to everybody. So we're just dependent on our cell phones, our cell service, and if we happen to have Wi-Fi, our Wi-Fi. Folks can say that they can hear me. Let me see if we can bring Jim back in. I was just beginning to get to your questions. He was just talking about J. Robbins' new album, J. Robbins of Jawbox. He was talking about Discord Records, which is a label for which Jim and I share a deep, abiding, influential love, changed both of our lives for the better. And I was hoping to get into that. Let me see if I can bring Jim back in. While I do that, there's Jim's new record, Sparta's new record, Trust the River. Let me see if I can get Jim in. Come on, Jim. Hey, we see Jimmy Baldwin. The Vivador is on too as well. Jim, good to see you, cuz. Low budget is all good. Hey, you there?
I am.
I can hear you now.
But now I just have this.
but your face is frozen. It's in a cool, inquisitive pose like this. There you are. And our viewers went through the roof just as soon as you came back in. We're nothing without you, Jim. Come on, come back to us. As my dad would say, fuck stick. Oh, there you are. Jim? We see him. We just can't hear him. I lay all this at the feet of Cynthia Cano, who's the producer of this show and was supposed to check everybody's internet and sound connection. So folks can hear me. Jim, I've got an idea. Can you, and Cynthia, if he can't hear me, can you text this to him? Can he turn off his phone and turn it back on? So Jim, turn off your phone, turn it back on. And in the meantime, let me take a few of your comments and questions. Then we'll get Jim back on, okay? Poor Kano. I know, I'm sorry. None of this is Kano's fault. King Alfred says, do you only have one shirt? Yes, I've got this blue shirt. Wear it and wash it on a daily basis. You know what's funny? Amy asked me, why are you wearing a buttoned-up collared shirt every day when you don't have to go anywhere and you don't have to impress anybody? And I told her it's because we're both homeschooling our kids right now, and I feel like this commands a little bit more respect. And it's kind of my outfit and my uniform. You all know that by now. Let me take some other questions. This is a great question from Sarah Woodward Paul. How are asymptomatic people getting tested to know whether or not they're positive or they're negative? Did you guys hear this shit from the governor of Georgia today saying, I didn't know this, but asymptomatic people can carry coronavirus or COVID-19 and be transmitters. And so for that reason, we're now going to do X, Y, and Z. The X, Y, and Z that we should have been doing a month ago, or at least 3 weeks ago, or at least a week ago, but we're just going to figure it out and do it today. So Sarah asked a great question. If we're not testing, which we are not now, in a country of more than 325 million people, we've tested in the thousands so far. How do we know who has it and who doesn't have it so that we can keep it from spreading? Short answer is we don't. And we really need to bring newer, better, quicker responding tests to market in a way that can test people en masse to keep us from spreading this. So somebody compared this yesterday to, do you guys know the quantum mechanics conundrum of Schrodinger's cat? There's a cat in a box. Sorry, Jim, I know you're a cat owner, but there's a cat in a box. The lid is closed. It's a shoe box. You can't see inside. And the cat's not moving. Is the cat alive or is the cat dead? And it kind of, I guess, and I'm not a physicist, helps to explain a dynamic of quantum mechanics and particles being in two places at once. The cat is both alive and dead. It's both alive and dead until you remove the cover of the box and see for yourself. We all have COVID-19 and we all do not have COVID-19 until we are tested. So it's Schrodinger's virus, somebody described it as. So the thing is, act as though you are asymptomatic and carrying the virus. That's the best possible policy. Don't leave your house. Don't touch anybody. Wash your hands until they're raw and then keep washing them. Stay at home and check in by phone with your elderly neighbors or your parents or your grandparents to see if they need help. Go to the grocery store in only those instances for them and for yourself. Otherwise, don't leave the house. Okay? Cynthia says the steam has cleared up, but I bet you she means the stream has cleared up. Let's see if we can get Jim. And I think my kids are off the internet, which is allowing this stream to work. Garcia says, say something in Spanish. ¿Qué podemos decir sobre qué está pasando este momento? Vamos a preguntar a Jim en español sobre su música y qué está haciendo en este momento. All right. Scrub those hands, says Tim. That's right. There's Gwen. Gwen is on. Hey, Gwen. We need to get Gwen on, although she said she won't, but I want her to come on and talk about the food bank. Yes. Oh, Team of Rivals. Okay. You just happen to be reading.
Just happen to be reading it. Yeah.
Are you in real life reading that book right now?
I am, and I've gotten here because it's, as I answered an interview the other day, it's 24,000 pages long. It is hard to read, but yeah. I love it.
It's a good book.
It's so appropriate right now. It's so appropriate.
Lincoln was in so many ways a bad.
This is
uncouth, I guess, compared to the folks who lived in the big cities. He had people who competed against him for the presidency, people who are still competing with him while they're in his cabinet. They're trying to undermine him, but he says, "Fuck it, I'm going to bring all these brilliant people together for the good of the country." Such a good book. I'm glad you're reading that. That answers that question. What is your reading?
You should do a drunk history with Team of Rivals.
I thought about asking you to have a beer with me during this. Next time we have you on, you choose actually, yeah. I will order a beer from Eloise. I'll order a grilled cheese and a 6-pack. You do the same, and we'll eat our grilled cheeses, drink our 6-packs, and talk about music and books. Okay, let me ask you some questions that people have queued up for you. Okay. so many good ones. Okay, I'll start with a light one, and then we'll go deeper. Kia asks, what's the best cocktail that you've made in quarantine?
Okay, so I think it's called an Old Buddy.
Okay, what's that?
It's essentially a Negroni, but with bourbon instead of gin, and actually with sweet vermouth or dry vermouth, sorry, instead of sweet vermouth. So it's a third bourbon, a third Campari, and a third dry vermouth.
All right, and
pretty good.
Jim, I hate to do this to you. Nobody wants to answer this question, but I want to be responsive to the people who are watching. Beatles or Stones? And why?
And here's the problem. I'm going to say the Beatles because the Beatles stopped, right? And that's the key, is that they stopped when they should have stopped, which I believe bands should do. I think that sometimes bands have a life, and that life peaks. And when you go out at that peak, when the Beatles stopped, it encased their music forever, right? There's some real misses with the Stones, right? There's some real bad Rolling Stone songs, in my opinion. But then again, it's a hard thing to answer. I'm going to say Beatles.
And Skylar has a follow-up question. Favorite Beatles album?
I don't think I have a favorite, actually. I'll be honest. I can't think of. I wouldn't say necessarily one over another one. It's kind of a cop-out, but it's true.
Yeah. No, they're all so good. I wouldn't give any of them away. One that holds they all kind of hold a special place. Like when I was growing up, my mom still had her Beatles records that she'd bought in the 60s. And I remember discovering Magical Mystery Tour and just obsessively listening to that album all the way through, being blown away by the stereo effect of these songs, this whole concept of the Eggman, Cuckoo Cuckoo, the gatefold, and these. I hadn't seen the movie, which I saw at the El Paso Public Library. My dad, Pat O'Rourke, bless his soul, his version of what we were trying to do with homeschooling was when I would come home from school, he would point me in the direction of the downtown public library and just say, go hang out there and come back in a few hours. And one time I went down there and they were screening Magical Mystery Tour, which was an all-time mind blower as a 12-year-old boy. So that holds a special place. And in my adult life, Beatles for Sale, which when we lived in Brooklyn and Wallabout, we'd play and have people over to dance to. That one really stands out. Now, I don't know musically that they stand up to Sgt. Pepper's or the White Album or Rubber Soul, but sentimentally, they're big ones for me. But something that you and I share. Go ahead.
It doesn't matter if it holds up musically to anything else because it's your. This is the thing about music, is that it's your interpretation and full embracing of that makes it what it is. So like when I talk to people about my records and they say, what does this song mean? And I always just say, what does it mean to you? Like the fact that you've taken this into your life and made it something, that's like the magic ingredient. Otherwise, I mean, it's like the cat in the box. It's just a record in a sleeve on a shelf. Who cares? It's nothing. It's everything and nothing, right? But when you put it on and you experience and it becomes part of your life, then all of a sudden that's what matters. And that's why it's, sort of like politics. It's almost impossible to win a debate in music. You can't convince me of something that isn't part of my life. It doesn't work. Like it's hard. I could only pretend to like something if I wanted you to like me for liking it, but I can't like something unless it's become part of me, right? And I will say this, the song is A Day in the Life, right? Is it A Day in the Life, the Beatles song?
Yeah, of Sgt. Pepper's.
The two songs put together?
Yeah, that's so good.
All-time favorite Beatles song, easily, hands down, the best.
I can agree with that. I routinely have a new favorite Beatles song. I'll hear something on the radio. I'll hear Hey Jude, and that's it. I'll hear A Day in the Life, and it is the be all end all. I'll hear something else. There's so many songs that are so important to me, and I love your definition of what makes a song great to you. It's what is great to you. But I think that was a hard thing to grow out of, growing up being around other people who are into music, and the competitiveness and the butt sniffing that goes on with, you know, do you like this band? And were you into this band before, you know, they did this thing, and what is cool and what's not? And the moment you can escape that, and just be into what you're into is a beautiful moment in listening to music. So on that topic, you had started before we cut off, you'd started to talk about Jay Robbins, Jawbox, and you'd mentioned the word Discord. You and I both grew up listening to Discord records, and for me at least, it was an exit from commercial radio and this idea that only the Beatles or the Stones could make amazing songs or tour or start a band or put out records. Here was this label started by people who were not that much older than we were, that put out amazing, life-changing, important music that was intense and raw, and you couldn't find it on the radio, and it just absolutely shook up your world in the best way. Talk about, because one of the questions asked was, what got you into music? And I thought that was just too open-ended. Talk about how you got into the world of punk rock and touring and putting out your own records and running things yourself. I mean, you're helping to create a music scene or develop a music scene in El Paso when you're starting out. You then help to showcase it as a club owner later on. How did this all start?
So, I mean, I listened to my parents' records, would be the beginning of it. You know, lots of Beatles and Jefferson Airplane and Willie Nelson and Billy Joel. That's where I fell in love with Billy Joel. I would listen to Billy Joel records like nonstop. I love his storytelling. That's my favorite thing about Billy Joel's songwriting is that you get instantly put in an Italian restaurant in New York. I'd never been to New York. I didn't know what an Italian restaurant in New York was like, and I think I sort of discovered the escapism of music there. Then I had a music class in 7th grade, and I ended up getting stuck with the bass and took it home and started learning the little things that you're supposed to learn, and had been really into like Benny Goodman, sort of like big band stuff was what I was like super into. Super cool kid. And that music was way too complicated for just picking up a bass and learning. And my sister got me into, she started listening to sort of the alternative radio station. We lived in Albuquerque for a couple of years, and she would listen to the college station. And this is where it all started. Like, started skateboarding, got my first Subhumans record, started listening to Dead Kennedys, started learning Kennedy songs on bass. And all of that happened in 9 months, right? That was one school year where it was like skateboarding, punk rock, bass, learning the stuff. We moved back to El Paso, sort of reconnected with some old friends of mine that had been on the same trajectory, you know, BMX, skateboarding, punk rock. And then we just started playing in bands. So I was playing in basements and garages like probably around 12, 13. And the thing that was great for me about punk rock, I mean, not just that I love the music, but it was a community that said like, yeah, you can play. We don't care if you're good. It doesn't matter. That's secondary. You know, primary is play. Secondary is we don't care if it's good. It doesn't
Primary
matter.
is, are you breathing?
Yeah. And it's such a collection of misfits and weirdos and whatever. And it has its own rules. Like it's not like punk rock super open-minded. Like you're definitely judged on how you look and judged on what you're listening to and whatever. But for me, I found that's where I seemed to feel comfortable, and I was able to sort of flourish there. And from there, it just became sort of things that we needed to do. Christine and I, we've been together a really long time. One of the things we did when we were first dating is we had a tiny club across the street from St. Clement's called The Clinic, in a little 500 square foot storefront with about 4 or 5 other friends. And we would have tiny shows there, really tiny shows. And from there, you know, we had a record store in Cincinnati with a few friends. We had God, we've had like a couple of record labels, and it's always just because we wanted to do something. And the thing about DIY, and something that I learned from Discord and sort of that whole movement, is that if you want something, just do it. You know, like Rollins says, just get in the van. Like, you know, kids will ask all the time, like, how do I make it? Well, just go on tour. Just get a van. How do I get a van? Just get a van. Like, figure it out. That's what it takes. It takes all four of you working for 6 months and saving your money to rent a van for a week. Is that worth it to you? Then do it. If it's not worth it to you, don't do it. It's simple enough. And then how do you make it? You just go play. Keep playing. And then I think that you'll find your level of making it. So is it I want to be in a band that plays once a week? Is it I want to be in a band that tours? For me personally, I desperately wanted to tour the world. I wanted to go and see these places because I was interested in Japan, and I was interested in Australia and Europe. And one way for me to get there was to play music. And it worked after, you know, it's the 7 years overnight success story.
I like that. You were an overnight success, 7 years in the making.
Yeah.
I really, really appreciate you being on with us, and wishing you the greatest luck in the world in really tough times. And want to remind everybody, let me see if I can pull this up again, to go out and buy this record or to listen to this record on any streaming platform. It's called Trust the River. It comes out the 10th of April. Sparta cannot tour now, but Sparta will tour at some point in the future. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys play again. I'm assuming El Paso will be one of the dates.
It tends to be.
Yeah, not a big surprise. And Amy and I are going to volunteer at the food bank tomorrow. So if you're around, we'll see you there. If not, I hope I see you sooner rather than later. And really grateful again that you did this.
Thanks for having me.
Gracias. All right, everybody. That was Jim Ward. Again, his new record with Sparta, Trust the River, is coming out really soon on the 10th. I played a little bit of one of the singles or one of the tracks from that record at the start of the show, but you should go out and listen to it for yourself. I pulled up also a couple of great videos on YouTube. Really good stuff. Okay, I'm going to wrap up. This is our guest tomorrow. You can almost see his name. It's Mike Stevens. We just got these really nice, snazzy new graphics. And I want to thank Cynthia and Christy for putting this together. We're going to start having these preview graphics for the folks who are coming up. I don't know how to remove the comments so that you guys can see the whole thing, but you can see the whole thing. Mike Stevens. Who the hell is Mike Stevens? He's the guy in the backpacking photo on the right, and then in the left, this is us in Brooklyn at Wallabout in Mike's room. But today he lives in Springfield, Missouri with his family, runs a movie theater there. And we've checked in with El Paso with Jim Ward. We've gone to New York City to talk to emergency room doctors. We were in Houston with a public health expert. We're now going to go to Missouri tomorrow and see how the good folks of Springfield, Missouri are doing via Mike Stevens tomorrow. That's at 4:30 Mountain, 5:30 Central, 6:30 Eastern. We won't forget about you Pacific time zone, 3:30 for you, and we'll see you there. Goodbye, everybody. Be well, and we'll see you tomorrow.